Hello my citizens of the world, I'm Yes or No, and I wanted to do a video about how many top 100 songs are sexist. Why did I want to do that? Probably because I'm a man-hating feminist. No, I don't. Why else does anyone do anything other than to expose the patriarchy? I do actually have an event that inspired this video in particular, and that was that a few weeks ago I was in a bar with some of my friends, and this one guy walks up to me and he starts talking to me, and I'm like, cool, talking to a guy in a bar. So far, so good. But then he says to me, he's like, you know, my girl was nagging me, and so I decided to come over and talk to some other bitches. If you were inside my head at that moment, just be glad you weren't, right? So I said to him, I'm like, well then I don't know why you came to talk to us. I wasn't a bitch yesterday, I'm not a bitch today, and I'm not gonna be a bitch tomorrow. And then I just walked away. The reason why this little bit of casual sexism really bothered me is because I know there's this thing called the illusory truth effect. To those of you who don't know what the illusory truth effect is, it says the illusory truth effect is the tendency to believe false information to be correct after repeated exposure. Repetition makes statements easier to process relative to new unrepeated statements, leading people to believe that the repeated conclusion is more truthful. Oh, and where else do we hear things repeated over and over again, more so than in modern day pop songs?
Repeat stuff, repeat stuff, repeat stuff, repeat stuff.
Right, so if a pop song is telling you 500 times over that you are in fact the B word, sooner or later, ladies, you're gonna believe it. So what I did is I set out to figure out how many top 100 songs are sexist. First thing I had to do is I had to set a definition for sexism. I thought, okay, easy peasy. What is sexism, Google? What is it? Sexism, noun, prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination typically against women on the basis of sex. What's that? What sexist means? What does sexist means? And that all seemed fine and dandy until everything went terribly, terribly wrong. He used it in a nice way. He said badass be, so empowering, I guess. I'm not gonna count it as sexist. And I'm not gonna call it sexist because they're talking about how much they love women, but that's the confusing thing too, right? Is these men who love us also do things that, like, it's confusing. Okay, so that clip might not have seemed super terribly wrong, but that's only because I accidentally deleted all the 500 other clips of me filming that day. But basically, I just got super confused listening through these songs, trying to figure out which ones were sexist and which weren't, right? Because it's not like a cut and dry black and white situation. If it were, of course, we'd all be like, sexism over there, me on the good side. In fact, it's actually quite confusing. I was actually watering down my definition of sexist, you know, when I was counting these songs, because I didn't want people to be like, that's not sexist, that's just like a very nuanced example of blah 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 blah. And so I'm like, this is, you know what? We need a more concrete definition of what's going on. So I started over. And I decided, instead of trying to figure out how many top 100 songs are sexist, I would try to figure out how many top 100 songs use the words bitch, hoe, thought, whore, slut, C-word. Also, you know, just for comparison's sake, I threw the N-word in there as well. People are like, why would you compare the two? They're totally different. But in a way, they're kind of totally not different. They both stem from words that are degrading and trying to oppress an already oppressed group of people. Even when you sing it, it doesn't make it sound better. Oh, I even created an Excel sheet like a boss. Actually, more like an intern. I should have paid someone to code this for me. But I took it from the week of July 10th. Did that week because that's the week you measured this. Here are the numbers. So 32 of the songs use the B word, 13 of the songs use the word hoe, 2 use the word thought. If you don't know what thought means, it basically stands for that hoe over there. And 35 total of the songs use the B word, hoe, or thought. Compare that to the N word, which was used in 34 out of the 100 songs. So actually they're quite close. They're used a little bit more than 1/3 of the time. But I thought the really interesting part was when I was looking at the N-word, for example, I realized that not a single person used the N-word if they weren't black. Which, when you compared that with the 35 songs that used the B-word, the word hoe, or thought, only 7 of those songs were sung by women. The other 28 were sung by men. So that basically means 80% of the people using a derogatory term towards women were men. You know, kind of wild for a word that's been reclaimed. You know, but some of you guys might be arguing, you're like, well, maybe more of the songs sung on the top 100s list are by men. And you're right. You didn't know I was gonna get this geeky today and tell you all the stats, but you're right. 75% of the songs were sung by men, 35 of the songs were sung by women. If you're wondering, how does that add up to more than 100? It's because some were duets. So basically that means women and men were using the B word pretty much in equal proportions, right? Or the word hoe or the word thought. But part of me is just wondering, like, why the B word isn't sort of like the N word. Like, why did men get to use the B word when it wasn't traditionally used against them, right? Like, white people don't use the N word. Why do men use the B word? And of course, you know, there were other words than the B word, right? There was the hoe. And let me give you a great example of how the word hoe was used in one of these songs. Okay, it's the Kid Laroi. It's Without You. And what does he say? He says, okay, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. Can't make a wife out of a hoe. Oh. People listen to this. How do people actually listen to this? How is that the top 15th song? I'm glad it's going down. What? That is clearly not using it in like a gung-ho kind of ho way. No, that's a way to keep women in their place and let us know what we're supposed to be. And I also want to point out that it wasn't just sexism against women, and it wasn't just sexism through the use of like crude words, but there was other type of sexism that you could see clearly through stereotyping or objectification. There was this one song called Things a Man Ought to Know by Lainey Wilson, and it goes, I can hook a trailer on a 2-inch hitch, I can shoot a shotgun, I can catch a fish, I can change a tire on the side of a road, yeah, I know a few things a man ought to know. That was obviously a clear example of stereotyping. Or there's this song called Lil Bit by Nelly, and it goes, shorty looking alright, TK jeans on, skin tight, she be shaking that tail light, got me froze in the road like a deer in the headlights. Clear objectification, never talks about her personality once, right? And so these songs are great examples of how, although they were not counted in the overall use of the word bitch, the word hoe, you know, the word thought, it's still sexism, right? So the sexism is actually higher than what's displayed in that 35% figure that we have. Going back to the numbers, I know some people are just gonna be like, okay, well, so what, 35% of what? Like, mostly what you're counting is the B word, and like, so what? Like, it's just the B word. You hear it all the time. I don't know what's so bad about the N word or FAG, you know, it's the same thing. I mean, I get it, it's different, but it's the same thing. But let's talk about it. When I was doing my research and basically control effing my way through all of these songs, I found that the B word was mainly used in a few different ways. It was used as a way to put down female aggression, to put down male weakness, to show ownership over someone, to show women as a disposable sex object. Sometimes it was used as a way to reclaim the word, and then sometimes it was just used as like an interjection. Like, bitch, that's not fair.
Giving a guy a shot down there. Interjections, hey!
And I want to give examples, and I also want to like cross-reference those examples with this research study or this argument, with this paper that I read. So the paper I read was called Reclaiming Critical Analysis, the Social Harms of bitch. So digging into it, the first quote says, there are hundreds more pejorative terms in English for women than for men, most of them sexual. And when I was reading through the song lyrics, I really found that to be true. I only saw the word dick 3 times, and when I did see it, it was not used as a put down, it was literally just used to describe a penis. Whereas I never saw the B word used to describe a female dog. We do not have a put down for men in the same way we have a put down for women or a put down of people who are black. So when we're using those more than a third of the time, and we don't have a word to put down like men more than a third of the time, and there's this, thing called the illusory truth effect that happens when we hear stuff about ourselves over and over and over again, it's like, men are really not subjected to the same kind of hearing themselves as less than in the pop industry on a daily basis. What does that do to your mind over decades? I mean, I don't, food for thought, food for thought. All right, let's get to the next quote that really struck me. A bitch, as most English speakers know, is a female dog. Like the use of slut or hoe today, it carried a connotation of sexual libel. The idea was that a woman being called a bitch was being accused of being worse than a prostitute because at least a prostitute stood to gain financially from the broad distribution of her sexual favors. So when the B word is used this way, it's basically used to treat women as a disposable sex object, right? And I saw this in a couple songs. So I saw this in the song Rap Star by Polo G. I won't love a hoe after we fuck, she can't get near me. Only B I give a conversation to is Siri. I mean, this man just talked about women like they are just different generations of iPhone. Use one up, get rid of it. Use the next, boom, on to the next one. Really what I saw in these songs was that if men were not talking about women in this disposable way, then they were usually talking about them in a way that implied ownership. And if it wasn't that, then it was more of like a I am dominating over you type of thing. When it came to ownership, I saw a lot of my bitch being thrown around, and when I saw the domination, let me just give you an example from the lyrics, right? So this one was from the song Juggernaut by Tyler, the Creator. Sign my John Hancock on a bitch every time I check you. Listening to a song that is very sexist by Tyler, the Creator, and I looked to see if hoe was in the word, and it came down to show less, and I'm like, yes, please do show less. Or another song by Tyler, the Creator, this time showing ownership, and this is from Wilshire. He says, he ain't even call you his bitch until he see me make you smile. Like, that's supposed to be romantic. We're supposed to resonate with the fact that this guy is upset that another dude is calling his girl his bitch, when really Tyler wants his bitch to be his bitch. What kind of messed up logic is that? And as long as we're on the messed up logic train, let's chugga, choo-choo, straight into the station of reclamation. How have we reclaimed the B word, guys? And why do we think we're doing it? I showed you the numbers. Clearly men are still using the word, so we haven't reclaimed it in that way. But a point that the paper made that really resonated with me was that you cannot reclaim something that was never yours, right? Like, it was never ours to begin with, so we can't reclaim it. We never claimed it in the first place. It was men using the B word to put down women. If you want to talk about a word that should be reclaimed, it's probably feminism. And that's a point that the paper made, is that women started using feminism as a way to challenge the patriarchy, and then it was soiled and used in a negative way by men to challenge that. The B word was used as a way to put us down in the patriarchy, and now we're trying to step into it to feel some kind of ownership. But what the paper said about that, and which I really agreed with, it said that that's really a form of false power. Let me read you what they said. That brings us to the central problem with reclaiming bitch. The bitch has no real power. She can wear the word as an individual, but unlike the term feminist, it is not part of a movement. Rather, a woman referred to as a bitch by a man may become vulnerable to his power, including violence. That women would rather call themselves or other women bitches rather than feminists suggests that domination and subordination have become the only legitimate options in US society. I have to read you more. So, okay, It says, significantly, young women who greet each other with a friendly, "What's up, bitches?" admit that they also say, "She's a bitch," in an unfriendly way. Reclaiming has not gone along with women giving up bitch to demean other women. And I think this is why I was getting so confused when I initially was trying to figure out which songs were sexist, and I was listening to Doja Cat and Megan Thee Stallion. Because they do this all the time! Okay, so it's interesting because I feel like I'm getting the vibe that Megan Thee Stallion is very very progressive in a lot of her ideals, but then also profits off of semi-sexist lyrics, pretty sexist lyrics, but then she also turns some of them empowering to flip stuff over on its head. And so she's just tangling a lot of stuff together so that you get kind of confused as to what the overall message is. In the song Thought Shit by Megan Thee Stallion, she goes, "Hoes trying to call me a snake, shit, I guess I can relate, cause a bitch spit a whole lot of venom." Right, talking about herself in like a kind of way. But then in the very next breath, she uses the B word as a put down, cause the bitch know better than to let me hear. She is still feeding into the domination system when she puts down women in this way. Doja Cat does the same thing too. So in the song Best Friend by Saweetie featuring Doja Cat, it goes, "That's my best friend. She's a real bad bitch." Right? They're each other's best friends. They're each other's bitches. Woo! But then you see in other songs where Doja Cat uses the B word as an insult. This doesn't have to be towards women either. So in her song Ain't Shit, she says, "Acting like that cause your dad's a bitch." This using the B word towards men is really actually kind of still like using the B word towards women. Okay, so in the paper it says, "Laughing at men who become a man's bitch or any men who are seen as being like women only makes sense in the context of a culture in which women are deemed inferior." That's the whole reason why calling a man a bitch is really putting on women, because it's basically saying like, hey, we don't like the feminine, stop being weak. Oh, I have so much more to say, but I also have a birthday party in 45 minutes that I need to get to. So I will come back on Monday. Yeah, we'll finish up this video then. Okay, bye. Miss me? You're like, no, you were only gone for a jump cut. Okay, well, I'm back and I wanted to finish off with 2 quotes from the paper. It says, "We're convinced that women feel good when they say, 'Hey bitches,' to their friends, just as women accept saying 'you guys' and 'freshmen.' But experiencing what we say or do as pleasurable does not make it harmless." And then, the quote to end all quotes, it says, "Our point is not that these words are offensive, though they may offend some, but that they unintentionally hurt women as a group. That most people aren't bothered by them is disturbing, indicating that sexism is the water we swim in, and we are the fish who cannot see it." So yeah, guys, where do we go from here? We gonna shield our ears, hide our children, pull a Van Gogh? I don't know, maybe we just shouldn't fill our minds with such gunk music. You know, it's interesting because out of all the songs, all the 100 songs, there was only one that challenged this concept of a bitch. And that was the song Build a Bitch by Bella Porch. The lyrics go, "This ain't build a bitch, you don't get to pick and choose, different ass and bigger boobs if my eyes are brown or blue. So if you need perfect, I'm not built for you." Honestly, it should have just said, "I'm not built for you," right? Like, not even if you need perfect. Because this is not Pygmalion or My Fair Lady. None of us here on this earth have been created for someone else's consumption or pleasure. You know, what's wild is that that was one of the few songs that actively challenged the gender status quo. So when you think about it, we are really getting indoctrinated with bad messages about ourselves. We deserve, as humans, to be told better stories about who we are, right? We deserve better. We deserve better. We deserve better.
Repeat stuff.
Donate to my Patreon. Donate to my Patreon. Donate to my Patreon. Repeat stuff. Repeat stuff. Repeat stuff. Or go watch more of my videos. Love you guys. Bye.